What's up, guys? I'm just gonna make a real quick video. I think it's gonna be quick. Um, Once I get started talking, you never know. But a couple of my other videos had gotten some decent feedback on them, sort of my how-tos and things like that. The last one we did was how do I plan out my stories, my shows, and I kind of ran through the planning sheet that I use. That's what we got pulled up right here. In that video, we used TCW. I was thinking about starting a little for fun side game with TCW. Never really did. So I'm back to my North of the Border here. I've run probably about 2 or 3 weeks worth of shows in North of the Border. I think that series might be on YouTube. I'm not sure. It might be under the Cornellverse series that I did. But long story short, that's what this sheet is for. And I just thought I'd take a couple of minutes to run through how I develop my feuds. So we did our planning sheet. We've kind of got a little bit of that, mapped out here a little bit. And we did a video on that. So I thought it'd be kind of, why don't we just kind of, the natural segue is into planning storylines and stuff. So I use a simple Microsoft Word document. I actually don't. I use, I shouldn't even say that. I use just a regular notebook, and I just kind of mark it out, book it better, North of the Border Pro Wrestling. I use a notebook for each company that I'm playing with, that's going to be a serious playthrough. So I don't have one for like TCW, just kind of for fun. I'm not really sure how long. But if I think I'm going to invest some good time into it, I use a notebook. And I just handwrite all my stuff in the notebook. But for the sake of the video, I went ahead, I typed it up in Microsoft Word, and you can kind of see that down here. I'll pull that up in a minute. But ordinarily, I'm a marble notebook guy. I like using my marble notebooks, and that's kind of what I use to plan out, at least storyline-wise, that's what I use to plan out this. I use my sheet for actually planning out shows and stuff. There are a couple of really cool options that you could use that I've looked into. There are some pretty neat like family planners that I'm thinking about kind of using, and basically it's got a I don't think I have it here anywhere around me. I don't, but I'm kind of test playing with that. It's got basically a calendar page for each month where you see the whole calendar, the whole month, and then each page after that is a week, Monday through Saturday or Sunday through Saturday. And it's got marked where you can write stuff in, and then it's got side little notes that you can put in there. And it kind of, I'm thinking it'll work well for a book it better kind of thing, because you can map out on the calendar on the first page. You can map out your show dates and some ideas, and then on each weekly one where it's got Sunday through Saturday, you can actually map out the when the show, what the card's going to be, things like that. So I haven't really used it all that much yet, but I'm going to give it a shot. But for now it's my marble notebook. That's what I'm doing now. But for the sake of this video, I put everything in Microsoft Word. It's real short. I don't have a whole lot planned out yet. I just started the game. So, basically what I do, obviously I'll have my whole roster put out, as like usual, like the last one. And then I'll go into my notebook, or Microsoft Word in this case, and let me see if I can stretch this out here a little bit. So I'll plan everything out here. So I run 4 tournaments a year with North of the Border. I run the Clash Classic, which is a North of the Border pay-per-view. It's already in the game, but I run it as a tournament, as my major tournament. So think WWE King of the Ring, think New Japan's G1 special, all that, G1 Climax tournament, all that kind of stuff. That's basically what my Clash Classic is. Now, in the default Cornellverse, the Clash Classic takes place in February. I'm going to be moving that Probably down closer to October. I'll likely be swapping Obliteration. I move Obliteration to February, and I move the Clash Classic to October. And the reason for that is because I want the Clash Classic winner to win at Super Slam. Rather, I want the Clash Classic winner to go on to Super Slam and face the world champion at Super Slam. Now, I'm trying to remember. I do Midsummer Madness here. I have Sean Dealey challenging there. I may have, when I was putting this game together, I may have been thinking of using Midsummer Madness as my WrestleMania, which would explain why I haven't moved the Clash Classic yet. But let's go with, I don't think so. I think this might be from an older version of this sheet. Admittedly, I haven't played this save in a couple months. It's one of the nice things about planning it out like this. You can come back a few months later and just kind of rehash. You can visually see where you were and kind of get right back on the ball. But let's delete that because I don't really know why that's there. We're gonna go with Super Slam being our WrestleMania, North of the Borders WrestleMania. So right now, Tim Westybrook is defending his title at Super Slam. We're at Big City Brawl right now. We haven't run this pay-per-view yet, but we're at Big City Brawl right now. So Westybrook's going to go over here at Big City Brawl, and then he probably won't defend the title again until Super Slam. So 2 months later. He may defend it in here someplace, but whatever. Point being, Super Slam is like our WrestleMania. So I don't want Clash Classic just 2 months away. I don't want one pay-per-view in between it. So I'll probably be moving Clash Classic down to October and moving Obliteration up. Whatever. That's long. That's a super long-winded way of saying we're going to swap these pay-per-views. So basically what I plan out first at the beginning of the year is who's going to be winning my Clash Classic. Right now I have it here. It's Sean Dealey. Then I plan out my Queen of the Ring winner. Don't have one yet. My Ed Henson Cup winner. I have one here. The Outsiders. And then I sometimes will run a Young Lion Cup. I don't always run it. If I feel like I have a good handful of young guys that can put on a decent show, then I'll run a Young Lion Cup. I don't always call it the Young Lion Cup, but for the time being, that's what I've got it in here as. And basically, it's just if I think I have enough guys with under a certain amount of experience that I think could put on a good show, the good workers in the ring. North of the Border's heavy on in-ring performance product, so the popularity is not as big a deal. So if I have a group of 8 guys that are real young and I think can put on a good show, sometimes I run a Young Lion Cup. It's not really an every year thing, and I just find a spot to put it in here someplace. I'll run it on TV during the months, and then I'll just pop it in someplace. But yeah, so the same thing with the Queen of the Ring tournament. My goal for this save is to try and make Queen of the Ring an annual thing. I think North of the Border right now has some decent female talent, and I think I can add a little bit more. And if that's the case, then I'll start doing it every year, and it'll most likely get its own pay-per-view sort of dedicated to it. But for now, the only 2 tournaments that I run every year, their annual, is the Ed Henson Cup and the Clash Classic tournament. So I have my Clash Classic winner. I have my Ed Henson Cup tournament winner. Clash Classic, they both, I kind of alter sometimes. I vary what style of tournament it is. Sometimes it's single elimination. Sometimes it's a pool play. Kind of just like New Japan does. I like their tournament styles. So first things first, I pick the winners of those tournaments, right? Sean Dealey and the Outsiders. And then I try and think of some ways to kind of get there, right? Then I'm going to list out my main feuds. I try and go with 4. Right now I only have 3. But I like to have 4 main feuds. North of the Border doesn't require any feuds, but I like to have them in there. It builds heat. You get better results on your matches if you have them. And then I just kind of type them out, right? The most important thing for me when I'm coming up with my storylines is character development. Would this character act this way, right? Would this character naturally clash with this person? And character development is a whole nother video that we'll get into. It'll probably be the next one of these videos that I do. I like to write out basically just a short little paragraph, sometimes not even a paragraph, on almost every one of my guys. Definitely all the main eventers, definitely all the upper mids, and most of the mid-carders as well. If I have the time and I have the ideas, then I'll do it for everybody. I love building character development because I feel like it just, sometimes you don't really know where you're going with something. And if you do a little bit of character development, I feel like sometimes storylines just pop up. Like as you're writing these guys' motivations, their personalities, especially with the Cornellverse, because it's sort of your own little universe in your head, right? Usually a real world mod, if it's 97, you know what 97 Bret Hart was like. You know what 97 Shawn Michaels was, what his motivations were. But for the Cornellverse, you kind of don't. There's a little bit of history in the game, but it's real, real open, and I love that. So I like to write out what their motivations are, what their goals are. Are they motivated by titles? Are they motivated by money? Do they have friends? How do they treat their friends? Those kind of things. And I find when I do that, sometimes tag teams pop up that I wouldn't have ordinarily thought of. But after I finish writing out their development, I realize that these guys, character development wise, motivation wise, they're very similar. And so you end up with a team or something, or you end up with a feud where you notice that without even trying, you notice like, oh, this guy's motivations directly conflict with this guy's. But that's a whole nother video, and I could spend an hour talking about it, and I probably will at some point. But for now, let's just I'll stick with just the main feud here. So I try and get 4. Right now I only have 3. But I map them out basically from most important to least important. What's going to be the most focus of the show to the least focus of the show. I want to put focus on all of them, but you're always going to have 1 or 2 that are more important. So my main feud for the year is the House of Stone versus the Outsiders. So in this game, in this playthrough, this save, I'm going for sort of like a stable warfare thing, right? I like the idea of having these guys on stables. And the big one will be the House of Stone, obviously the Stone's stable, versus the Outsiders. And the Outsiders would be Steve DeColt's stable. Makes sense. He is the Outsider, Steve DeColt. So I figured, why not? We'll just call it the Outsiders, and we'll steal the name from Nash and Hall. But basically, it's just a basic Outsiders hostile takeover storyline, and then the purpose is to elevate Greg Gage to the next level and elevate the tag belts by giving DeColt brothers a run. The blow-off is the Stones eventually going over the DeColts. So, number 1, we talked about, my number 1 most important thing is character development in a storyline. The number 2 is purpose. The storyline has to serve a purpose. Anyone can just throw a storyline together, run some good angles, and boom, you're done. You can put your 2 main eventers, right? When I do a storyline, I base my whole storyline around the purpose of it, right? So in this case, yeah, it's the House of Stone versus the Outsiders, but the ultimate goal of the storyline is to elevate Greg Gage into the main event. So Gage is working as an upper mid-carder, and the goal would be... is he working as a mid-carder? Maybe even a mid-carder. I may have just brought him in. Well, let me see. Do I have him in here yet? Did I even add him? I don't even know if I even added him yet. No, this is old. Long story short, Greg Gage. So I brought Gage in. I think I'm working him as a mid-carder. But the purpose of the storyline is to elevate him to that next level, whether it's the main event, the upper mid-card, whatever, is to build his popularity. What better way? Put him in with the Outsiders, with Steve DeColt, and build his popularity that way. So that's the main goal. Is he going to make main event level? I don't know. But what better way to try and get that done than to put him with the DeColts? I've also brought in Ricky DeColt. So right now the Outsiders would be the DeColt brothers, Gage, and I think I don't have stables in here yet. This one's really old. And I think, did I bring Dante Dunn in? I don't know. But the main 3, it's the DeColt and Gage, right? and so you get in the House of Stone, you get these guys in there, and you bring Gage up to that next level. So that's the main purpose of that. In our next storyline, it's Sean Dealey proves himself. Sean Dealey's being beat down by the Can-Am Blondes, who see him as a threat. He must prove he belongs with Canada's best wrestlers. The purpose is to establish Dealey as a top contender, and the blow-off is a title win for Dealey at SummerSlam 17 after winning Clash Classic. Right behind House of Stone versus the Outsiders, this would be the next most important one, because whereas the purpose of that first feud is to get Gage up a level, and elevate the tag belts a little bit, basically the DeColts and the Stones are already kind of where they're going to be. They're going to carry the show in terms of popularity-wise, but they're all getting up there in age, with the exception of Ricky, and that's why Gage is in with them, to bring that youth there. But I love Sean Dealey, and I really wanted to kind of get him over as one of the top wrestlers in Canada, right? So in my head, this storyline is, Dealey comes over from CGC. CGC is more of a entertainment-based product, where he was the best wrestler over there, but now he's over here north of the border, where it's all about the wrestling, and Dealey's trying to prove that he can compete with these wrestlers as well. Where he can kind of compete with the best of the best in Canada. So that's kind of where my head was at when I was writing this story. But the purpose of it is to paint Dealey as a top contender and as a guy who's capable of carrying the company. I'd really like to put the title on him. I'm thinking if we do like a year-long build, he wins Clash Classic in October, challenges for the title at SuperSlam in 2017. That's his big coming out party, his big crowning moment. It'd be the culmination of a year and a half long feud. I really think that match at SuperSlam would be super, super hot. Hell, we could even do something like give the title to one of the Can-Am Blondes in a solo run. So Dealey goes over the Can-Am Blondes initially, proves himself over there. They stay bitter, whatever. Maybe, Owen Love goes on to win the title, way down the road. Dealey wins the Clash Classic. Dealey versus Owen Love. It all cycles back, a year and a half later. So, Dealey beats Owen Love initially. They go their separate ways. Love wins the title. Dealey wins Clash Classic. And then a year and a half later, it all cycles back. You get a one-on-one, something like that. Or we put the title on a guy like Steve DeColt, and then we have Dealey go over DeColt for the bigger pop. But long story short, the ultimate goal of that storyline is to get yourself a new champion in Dealey, and a guy that you can count on, as a babyface figurehead, for the next 8 to 10 years. A guy who can carry that company, whereas Steve DeColt, Dwayne Stone, they're all getting up there in age. You may only have 3 or 4 more years out of them. Who knows? Dealey's good enough in the ring where you can kind of build him to do that. And then we'll do a strong Eric Strong versus Cameron Vesey. Cameron Vesey's beating everyone in his path. Finally, a contender rises in a surging Eric Strong. The purpose is to put Vesey in the main event and move Strong to the top of the mid-card. The blow-off is an Eric Strong victory over Vesey, followed by Vesey moving up into the main event. So I like Vesey as the TV champ, but again, going along with that youth movement, I want to get him. He's working his upper mid-carder. I want to get him into the main event, into that world title picture or Canadian title picture as quickly as I can. So we're going to put him on a long winning streak of successful defenses. Meanwhile, running parallel to him, Eric Strong will be on a run of his own, winning all his TV matches, building up that momentum, with them eventually meeting. And Eric Strong actually gets the victory over Cameron Vesey. I think that'll pump Strong up, because he gets a win over the upper mid-carder, takes the TV title off of him, and it moves Vesey up into that main event. He's got to drop the title to somebody, So I don't want to hurt him too bad before moving him up into the main event, but he's got to drop it eventually. So I think Eric Strong is a good choice to put the TV title on, and because I really think that's kind of his ceiling. But you put the belt on him, he runs an open challenge or something, and establishes himself as that new top of the mid card, But the goal there is to get Cameron Vesey into the main event, and get him feuding with some serious stars. So this I kind of run this just parallel with my planning sheet. And again, like I said, I haven't really played this in a long time. I think this is actually an old North of the Border sheet. I don't even think it's up to date. It's definitely not up to date. It may not even be for the same game that I was planning this for. But yeah, so I run them kind of parallel, and I just, as I'm writing these stories up, I'm putting them into the matches here. So like the TV title, I'll probably have Vesey. Let's put Vesey versus Strong here and have Strong go over. So we get like a nice nice 4-month-long feud. Vesey and Strong building back to back. Vesey picking up big wins, in January and February, along with Eric Strong. Maybe Strong gets a TV title shot on television at some point around Grappling Glory. Maybe he gets a TV shot at Grappling Glory. That's actually not a bad idea. Let's do that, actually. So at Grappling Glory, see, this is why we'll do Vesey versus Strong. Vesey's going to retain, but Strong takes him to the limit, and Vesey has to cheat. Now that'll set up, let's put that mark in there. Vesey wins dirty. So, Eric Strong takes him to that limit. Vesey's got to cheat. That sets up the Super Slam match where Eric Strong finally takes the belt off of him. I like that because following up right behind that is the Ed Henson Cup. So Vesey's going to take a hit losing to Strong, but I can book him in a Strong tag team for the Ed Henson Cup. He can go over he can get a win on one of the main event guys in the tag team tournament at some point, which will help propel him up into a main event feud with whoever that guy is that he pins. So maybe he pins a main event babyface dirty in the cup, and then boom, you've got your main event feud right there. So this is why I like having both of them open, because that was literally just now. I didn't have that planned at all. But that was literally just something we were to come up with now, just because we're writing stuff out. So when I'm writing my feuds, number one, most important thing for me, character development. Would the character act this way? Number two, most important thing, a purpose to the feud. You have to have a purpose to the feud. It helps tremendously thinking of the direction that it's going to go, but it also just helps to make it feel a little more realistic. It's not, and a little less gamey. You can abuse the storyline system, especially in a company that doesn't require one, and you can just put your big names in there with some of the smaller names and build heat, and all your matches have a lot of heat, but there's not really a story there. It's a little gamey. I like to have an actual real story there, so a purpose behind the feud. Don't just throw guys together. Think about what you want to do, right? What do I want for Greg Gage? I want Greg Gage to go from the lower mid card to the upper mid card as quickly as possible. That's what I want. That's my goal. Cool. Pop him in with the Outsiders. Outsiders House of Stone. It's the main feud. He doesn't have to be super involved, but he can be there working with guys like Steve and Ricky DeCole, guys like Dwayne Stone. He'll get some singles matches. Maybe he can job out to Dwayne Stone, but he gets in there with a top tier guy. That's the purpose, You have to have purpose behind it. And then number three is direction. And we didn't really talk too much about it, but the direction. Don't just, again, you have to make a decision on where that storyline's going and run with it. You'll see in some of our Impact creative meetings, for example, Kato and I will argue back and forth for 25 minutes sometimes, just trying to figure out on the direction of, what's the purpose? Where are we going with this? It's important. You got to have that direction because your storyline's going to end at some point, and you have to have something real quick to segue into. Otherwise, that guy loses all that momentum. Perfect example in these storylines here is Vesey and Strong, right? So Vesey finishes up at SuperSlam like we talked about. Boom, Ed Henson cups right behind it. So now we know exactly what's coming up next for Cameron Vesey, right? There's a clear direction there for Cameron, right? And there's a fairly clear direction for Eric Strong, right? We're high on Eric Strong, but we're not like main event high on Eric Strong. You know, we like him on TV, but he's not a carry the company kind of guy like Vesey might be. So what's his direction? His direction is to take that belt off Vesey and then run an open challenge. You know, he's going to run a 2-month open challenge on TV, right, where he defends that title or raises the prestige of that title, right? That's his direction. His direction's less important than Cameron's direction, right? Cameron's the main guy that we're trying to get over in that feud. His direction's more important. Have a direction for your guys. Have a secondary plan afterwards. Like, what happens when this feud ends, right? I don't like to start any feuds that I don't have a general end date in mind. Sometimes House of Stone versus the Outsiders, I want that story to be a 12 to 15 month story. So do I have the end planned right now? No. What I do know is that the Stones are going to go over the Decolts, but I don't know how and I don't know exactly when. I just know somewhere between 12 and 15 months we got to start winding that down. But you can bet that I have a plan for the next 3 months. Okay? So that's kind of my 3 big rules. Make sure you have character development and it makes sense for that character development. Make sure you have a purpose to all your storylines. And make sure you have a direction for the storyline and post-storyline. And that's kind of it. I mean, that's kind of where I draw, you know, my storylines from and kind of how I throw them together. You know, but yeah. So, you know, character development, purpose, direction. Don't forget those 3 things. If you got those 3, you're good to go. And then just have a place to jot them down, whether you use the in-game notepad, Microsoft Word here, a notebook. I love my notebook. Or the Windows notepad. But yeah, so there you have it. There's my storyline insight. How do I plan my storylines? There it is. Stay tuned because shortly, probably within the next month or so, I'll be uploading another one of these videos, except we'll really dive into that character development. But yeah, hopefully at that point I'll have a nice studio to work on. If you follow us on Instagram, you saw our kind of before pictures and before video of our studio. It's in the works. If you didn't, go check us out on Instagram. It's Book It Better on Instagram. You can also follow us on Twitter. It's @BookItBetter1. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.